Hi everyone, this is Stefan from Random Design and this is our latest case modding project, the hammer of Thor from the video game Marvel's Avengers. We built this project not only in cooperation with Crystal Dynamics and the guys from Intel, but also with the LA-based artist Tristan Eaton. The hammer itself is mostly 3D printed and contains the hardware like the motherboard and CPU in the front and the graphics card in the back. Both are cooled by a custom-made water cooling. The rest of the water cooling components are placed in the base, and we added a nice little lighting effect to the radiator fans. So, have fun watching the making of. At first I made a 3D model of the hammer and adjusted the size to fit in the motherboard and graphics card. The hammer was then split in 4 major parts and printed in PLA on my Sindoh 3Dvox 2X. After sanding, I assembled the front and back part of the hammer. I used aluminum profiles to stabilize some of the thinner areas. After wet sanding, I filled all gaps and imperfections with milliput. To the inside of the hammer I applied a thin layer of XTC 3D. After curing I sanded everything down to get a smooth and even surface. Then the two halves were glued together. To work on the hardware afterwards I wanted an openable lid and I strengthened the lid with 2 metal rods. For the handle, I created a magnetic mounting mechanism to keep it detachable. Now the basic construction of Thor's 3D printed hammer is done. I glued both halves together and now I will take care of the seam line from the inside to strengthen it up a little bit. After that is cured, I will take care of the outside and also hide all the seam lines and small imperfections, because in the end I want that you don't actually see that the hammer is 3D printed. I used epoxy coat to strengthen up the seam lines of the 2 hammer halves from the inside. All outer seams were closed with milliput. I applied several thin layers of spray filler and primed the hammer with black spray paint. I dabbed on thin layers of an acrylic metal color and weathered the surface with a custom-made acrylic wash. Next, I resin printed the details of the hammer. I installed LED strips that will illuminate the runes of these parts from the inside later on. After filling and priming, the resin prints were also hand-painted and weathered. The runes were filled up with blue resin that readily cured under UV light. For the handle I used a PVC pipe that I covered with faux leather. Thin leather strips were weathered and then braided around the handle. The same leather and faux fur was used to make the wrist strap. So, the hammer is done. Now I need to work on the base, which I will build from plywood. And then I just need to install the hardware and I hope my measurements are right so everything will fit. After cutting all panels from plywood, I made all openings required to install fans, sockets and the power supply. All parts were glued together and fixed with some screws. The two radiators for the water cooling system were placed to the left and right hand of the base. After priming, the base was painted with stone grey acrylic colors. Dark and light grey were carefully dabbed on with a sponge to create a stone-like look, which was weathered afterwards. For the radiator fans and the power supply, I 3D printed covers which were painted and weathered in the same style. Finally, I installed the motherboard and graphics card, which both were switched to be cooled by a custom-made water cooling system. While the motherboard was on one side of the hammer, the graphics card was displayed on the other side. I sleeved all cables to match the overall color scheme. As a final step, I filled the system with blue liquid coolant. So, Thor's Hammer PC is done. Thanks to Intel, Crystal Dynamics, Square Enix and Tristan for this great collaboration. Also big thanks to our sponsors MSI, Corsair, Alphacool and ModMyMods. I hope you liked the video and see you next time. Bye bye.